the conference theme and provide a little bit of input from the two-day international think tank that it's been running for the 2 days prior to the conference. That brought together approximately 60 people from around the world to look at a number of important issues in depth, issues in policy, practice and research. So the major drivers, or some of the major drivers of change, the technology, and it's truly astounding what's occurring on that front and the impact that's likely to have in the next few years and decades in terms of gambling. I think we're just beginning to get our heads around what's ahead of us. Industry practice, the Minister was referring to discussions and negotiations currently underway between Sky City and the government. It's one illustration of the role of industry in terms of shifting the gambling environment. Demographics, ageing populations, ethnic mix of populations, migration. We're very much a globalised world now, interconnected. Consumer community attitudes and behaviour. Huge potential there. Government policy, which to a degree is also influenced by community attitudes and public. The services that are provided that many of you in this room work within, and also research. So these are some of the major drivers of change. The emerging technologies that have been an avalanche in terms of change across all aspects of our lives, they have the potential to greatly amplify that harm, but they also have the potential to be used to reduce it. So in this age of chance, we had rapid expansion in a number of countries, including New Zealand, during the 1980s. Rachel Volberg and myself carried out a national prevalence study, and we also other publications around that time. We referred to emerging interconnected trends that were predicted to influence the global evolution of gambling, and some of those elements were the changing of attitudes, greater, wider acceptance of gambling, the intersection of gambling and financial technologies, the advent of the internet and internet gambling, increased globalisation, economies connected, world countries connected up, And gambling and non-gambling settings, sometimes referred to as mixed gambling. Gambling used to be confined to particular times and spaces. They were linked to gender and social class. They were enclaves. They were not all pervasive, and that's one of the things that shifted dramatically. Gambling has penetrated every aspect of our lives and our communities and our environments. The number of venues is actually quite important, because one of the things that we know now from research very clearly is that living in proximity and working in close proximity to venues is very important in terms of whether you participate and also whether you develop problems. So previously the Minister was talking about the casinos. If you go to a place like Western Australia, where all of the gaming machines are herded into one casino, which is a little bit out of the major city, the problem gambling appears to be much less common there than in other Australian states or New Zealand, where electronic gaming machines are spread widely throughout communities, and they're particularly concentrated in low socioeconomic areas than areas where there are groups that are at high risk. And so the number and spread is very important of venues. But there are still very major gaps in knowledge. We don't really know much about the causation, the nature and the impacts or life course of problem gambling. It varies from one person to another and across different groups. We don't really know whether problem gambling prevalence has increased or decreased. The indications are that it's decreased, but because the methodologies of the different studies varied somewhat, we have to be a bit cautious about that. There is a study going into the field next week which will provide information to assist us in gauging that. But again, there is some uncertainty about that. You throw them all in together, you do some complicated statistical mixing and juggling, and then you get equations spat out the end. And what we found that there was indeed a strong relationship between the increased availability of EGMs and problem gambling. And in fact, it explained 59% of the total variation in problem gambling prevalence. It was explained by the density of machines, number of machines per capita. That's a very, very powerful finding. We also found that there was a significant relationship between reducing prevalence and the passage of time, and that explained 18% of variance. That's quite a big chunk of the action too. So over time, problem gambling was dropping. Now, machine numbers didn't drop in those jurisdictions. In fact, most have continued to increase. So, and that's about 1,000 people per year in the population would cease to have a problem over time. Some questions to leave us with. Is prevention intended to be effective, or is its main purpose to give the appearance of concern and action while we carry on business as usual? I think we could debate and argue that. I think I'm being overly cynical there, but I think it's a question that needs to be raised. Are there gambling-related health and other benefits? We've focused on the negatives. Why do so many gamble? Why many people gamble? There could well be health benefits to certain forms of gambling. We haven't really looked at it. Can electronic gaming machines be defanged? Or is their danger part of the attraction? And can we both have our cake and eat it? In other words, can we increase or hold gambling revenue while we also reduce harms, or are they mutually exclusive?